Okay, so far we've had the ability to look at each vertebrae in isolation, with the exception of C1, C2. I showed their articulations. It's a bit harder to visualize what the entire spine looks like, so I went ahead and took the liberty here to section it off into the cervical, thoracic, and lumbar of this model. Normally, of course, we know there would be a sacral section down here, but this model didn't have it, and I was not going to tape one on the wall. Oh yeah, by the way, so that's my current setup. Anyways, there's some things I want to outline and hopefully help you visualize each segment here. So we're going to start with the cervical first. So atlas actually fell off, sounds con, but this would still have atlas, then axis, and then your 5 typical, other than C7 vertebrae. And what's kind of hard to visualize as I take you around the side here is how that vertebral artery runs. So I put my normal pointer, now I have a different one, but I put my normal pointer in those transverse foramens to help you kind of see what the vertebral artery will look like. There is supposed to be one for C7, but it's broken off. This is a real model, just so you're aware. And that's the kind of differentiator, I would say, between thoracic and cervical, if you can find that transverse foramen. Because as we know, we move down to the thoracic, which are these 12 vertebrae here. We lose our transverse processes. No, we don't. In a normal model, we would have them all looking like these guys down here for the rib articulations, right? Okay. And now we're going to move down to lumbar. So there was a few things I want to clarify. And first, you guys are going to hate this, but we're going to jump down here. And so I've outlined the L4 and the L5 vertebrae. And I've also put a little piece of athletic tape I've rolled up to mimic a spinal nerve. Sorry, I'm shaking, I'm holding this. And this is to hopefully depict what the L4 nerve looks like. Okay, so notice it's kind of like a weird kidney shape. If I can turn in, hopefully, kidney-shaped kind of foramen. And it's made up of the superior vertebral notch of L5 and the inferior notch of L4. And see that spinal nerve there. And I know we've said this is normally a cramped space for the disc to kind of protrude on, but that's not necessarily what always happens. Normally the spinal nerve affected will be from the vertebral body or prolapse disc above it. And that makes sense if you would imagine this disc to prolapse and then to rip all its nucleus pulposus down, it's going to be right on top of that spinal nerve. Okay. We can also sort of imagine where the disc joint would be, right? If we had a intervertebral disc shown here, if we had one, that would give the anterior joint of the lumbar spine. But if we move dorsally, now we're looking at this dorsal view, and I'm going to put my pointer down here so hopefully we can see this. Where's my camera? We have our Z joints, or facet joints. And they primarily will do two things for us here in our lumbar spine. If I take a vertebrae here and try to rotate it, it takes everything with it, right? So that's going to help prevent excessive rotation of the lumbar spine, as well as a little bit of flexion and extension, right? You can notice it hitting those facet joints. And it's also going to help protect against the anterior shear forces that affect the lumbar spine. So hopefully that kind of helps you visualize how these articulate.